Hi guys, in this video, we are going to be following up on the One Punch Man theme by looking at the other female character figurine in the Banpresto Espresto Shapely line of figures, which is produced by Bandai Spirits. Here we have Tatsumaki, aka Tornado of Terro. Now who is Tatsumaki? She is an A-class rank 2 professional hero in the Hero Association, an organization of superheroes in the world of One Punch Man. She and her sister Fubuki, which I reviewed earlier, are known as the Psychic Sisters. And yes, the superhero pseudonyms are as cheesy as they sound. There's a whole comedic mini-arc revolving around the main protagonist's pseudonym. Anyway, let's go ahead to unbox Tatsumaki now. Although Tatsumaki comes in the same large Banpresto Espresto box as her sister Fubuki, which I had unboxed and reviewed in an earlier video, I actually expect Tatsumaki to be a smaller figurine. This is because, despite being the older sister, Tatsumaki is actually shorter in stature, more petite, and less voluptuous than Fubuki. Instead, based on the box art on show here, Tatsumaki seems to take up more space or volume width-wise as opposed to her sister. The box art has Tatsumaki in a pose whereby her esper powers are causing the wind to swirl around her, which in turn causes her 4 high-cut leg slits to flutter around her waist and legs. Anyway, let's open up the box and see whether Tatsumaki lives up to the beautiful box art images we have seen so far. Right off the bat, we can see that Tatsumaki, unlike her sister Fubuki, already takes up most of the space within the box, which is to be expected since Tatsumaki's footprint is higher width-wise. Also, unlike her sister, this figurine of Tatsumaki comes only in 2 parts, including the base. Tatsumaki herself comes fully assembled, and unlike Fubuki, which had both arms detached and needing assembly. So let me now just cut open the plastic wrappings that Tatsumaki and the base is placed in before we can give her a once-over and have a look at what the figurine has to offer. Now that we have Tatsumaki and her base out of the plastic wrappings, there is one thing my OCD tendencies would have me do first, which is to try and recreate the way the 4 high-cut leg slits that is on Tatsumaki's dress are positioned correctly around her, like in the box art. Before this, it actually never occurred to me that these leg slits would be soft material that can bend into shape. I had thought it was fixed in shape from the get-go. So what I'm trying to do here is to bend the leg slits to look like the pose shown on the box art. While I'm just using my fingers to do that here, there are actually better ways to do it. For example, by heating up the leg slits before bending them into shape. Well, anyway, that's the best I can do in this short space of time. I think it's close enough to how she actually looks on the box art. So let's move on. Now before I attach Tatsumaki to her small black round base, let's give her a quick once-over. Most striking is her bright emerald green hair, which has been sculpted to look like the ends of her hair are rising due to her esper powers activating. Meanwhile, Tatsumaki's form-fitting iconic dress has been given a highlights of purple, which is a complementary color to the green hair. And her face looks exactly like she's drawn in the manga, thus it bears a close resemblance to the anime version too. Now that we have given Tatsumaki a quick close-up view, let's then attach her to the small round base before taking a full 360-degree close-up look at the figurine's details, especially her paint job and her sculpted form. In this full 360-degree view of Tatsumaki, you may or may not have noticed that I've managed to better reshape her side leg slits so that their ends are pointing upwards. Earlier, I had just used my fingers to reshape the leg slits, but off camera, I had resorted to heating up the slits first with hot air from a hairdryer before bending them to the desired shape, and then later let them cool off and retain the shape that I bent them to. Tatsumaki is clad in a dress that's largely similar to her sister Fubuki's, that is a form-fitting V-neck dress with a high collar and long sleeves. The fundamental differences are Tatsumaki's dress looks slimmer on her petite body. On top of that, Tatsumaki's dress has 4 leg slits to show off her shapely legs. Lastly, her dress is black in color versus her sister's dark green dress. Tatsumaki's dress had been given highlights of purple, which is a complementary color to green. I believe it's a good choice because using grays as the highlight color would have been too dull. However, at least on my copy of the figurine, the execution of the highlight paint layering leaves much to be desired. It should have been done more subtly with less of a stark contrast between the blacks and the purples. Banpresto certainly nailed it in the looks department, seeing how closely the figurine's facial features resemble that of her manga and anime counterpart. Not much happens paint-wise on her face, apart from her large expressive emerald green eyes and her open pink mouth. But that's not too much of an issue when you find your eyes being drawn to her striking and bright vivid emerald green hair anyway. Granted, Tatsumaki's hair also lacks any noticeable shading, however, it is the detailed sculpt on her hair that impresses. I love how the ends of her hair are rising in response to her Esper powers being activated. It is as if the many strands of hair are being affected by static electricity, among other things. Having so many individual strands of hair sculpted separately creates natural highlights and shadows, which compensates for the lack of shading on her hair. Unfortunately, the application of purple highlights on her black dress were a bit heavy-handed, at least on my copy of the figurine. The highlights on the box art were certainly better. All 4 high-cut leg slits on Tatsumaki's dress draw attention to her long, shapely legs as well as her black, low-heeled shoes. However, it was disappointing to find a lack of skin tone shading on her exposed legs, which means the contrast between her skin and the black dress is a little too stark. Tatsumaki's pose, taken as a whole together with the fluttering high-cut leg slits and her rising strands of hair, looks more like she's floating on air rather than standing on just one leg. Her leg slits are all in black without any purple highlights, as is her low-heeled shoes. While her simple black round base is similar to her sister Fubuki's, it doesn't look as bad in Tatsumaki's case because unlike her sister, which had on thigh-high black boots and a dark green, almost black dress that covered up her legs, Tatsumaki had bare legs from her thigh to her ankles, which helps her bottom half stand out from the black base. When compared to her sister Fubuki, I feel that Bandai Spirits did a much better job with Tatsumaki overall. For example, Tatsumaki has an excellent pose that was executed well via sculpt and also via the reshapeable high-cut leg slits that she has floating around her. She also has a spot-on likeness to the anime manga character, which admittedly Fubuki also had. Now that emerald green hair on Fubuki looks fantastic, especially when coupled with the many individual strands of hair curving upwards. It gives her pose that little bit much more meaning. Now for the cons, the only one real issue I have with this figurine is that the purple highlights were laid on rather too thickly onto her black dress. Airbrushing these purple highlights more subtly, that is, in a thinner, more translucent layers, would have made the dress look much better. Because the purple highlights were laid on so thickly, she looks as if she has a purple dress rather than a black dress with subtle purple highlights. Sadly, these are the issues that we tend to find with more budget-friendly pre-painted figures in which the paint job or paint quality is not consistent throughout. Whenever figurines from anime or mangas that I'm a fan of are rare or hard to find, it's hard to prevent a little bit of bias creeping into my rating. That's why my ratings actually take this into consideration to mitigate such biases. For a detailed explanation, check out the description below. Anyway, I will give this figurine a rating of platinum or B rank, and it's a figurine I will gladly have in my collection. That's it for this review. Thanks for watching.